Now, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
When Congress refuses to act, and as a result hurts our economy and puts our people at risk, then I have an obligation as president to do what I can without them.
Sounds like he's living up to his words. That was President Obama not too long ago. And take what happened yesterday with the non-recess appointment, what we're calling the lunch break appointment yesterday. What is going on here? Is it legal, and how can the administration get away with this? David Freddoso joins us now from the Washington Examiner, online opinion editor and author of the book Gangster Government. You going to need an addendum to your book now, David?
I kind of think I'm going to. This is a little bit scary. I don't want to overstate exactly what's happened here. We're not talking about martial law. I don't want to. It annoys me when people make extreme comparisons or whatever. But this is a minor but important usurpation of power. It seems President Obama is really trying to do something that is not allowed under our Constitution.
Well, and that's but I mean, that at its core, just the statement you just made, doesn't that make it a pretty big deal, David? I mean, the president has ignored the Constitution, a law passed by Congress, precedents that have been sent down by the Justice Department and his own Solicitor General's office, and the sort of what has been observed in the history of this town. He just has ignored all of that to do what he wanted to do.
No, that is exactly right. His own Solicitor General, like you said, says that a 3-day break between, the 3-day breaks that are necessary because the one house hasn't allowed the other one to adjourn. That's not a long enough recess to justify a recess appointment. And yet here we are. We're having exactly those kinds of breaks right now between these pro forma sessions, which are required, by the way, not because of some rule, but because the Constitution itself says that the House and the Senate, the one cannot adjourn without the consent of the other. So, this isn't like they're staying in pro forma session just for fun. No, the House isn't letting the Senate adjourn. So, of course, the reason that the House isn't letting the Senate adjourn is to prevent recess appointments. But that's in the Constitution. The Constitution says the Senate is in session by necessity. They have to be in session because the House won't let them go.
But even at a more basic level, it is about the role of the Congress, which is to be a check and balance on the executive. And the executive doesn't get to do things unilaterally like a monarchy or like a dictatorship. Right. They have to have the approval of the Congress, which has not been granted.
No, that's right. This is something I write about in Gangster Government in the last chapter, actually. It's a chapter on reforming government in order to make the executive less powerful. We have an executive who's too powerful. It doesn't matter what party you're in or which party is the president at the moment. President Bush was too powerful. President Clinton was too powerful. President Obama is way too powerful right now. We have presidents who start wars on their own, who do things. This one is particularly bad, and this hasn't happened in a very, very long time. But this could be changed, and I think that you could abolish the recess appointment. It was invented when it was at a time when legislatures met very infrequently, when it would be very difficult to get the Senate back, and you might have an emergency, and you might have to have someone lead a department for a while for the next year or two in order to, preserve public order, in order to something like that. Today, the Senate's there practically every day anyway. Mm-hmm. There's no need for recess appointments. It's just a gimmick. It's just a way of presidents kind of circumventing the democratic process. We should pass a constitutional amendment abolishing the recess appointment. And fine, let it take effect after Obama leaves office. I'd be fine with that. But this sets such a terrible precedent. I would not want to see this go forward even for a minute. That the next president is going to think, oh, then I get to do this too.
Right. Dave, do you think this is hard, one of those things that feels like it's hard to make it a public concern issue because it is procedural and you try to give the explanation with the broad strokes of overreach and grab for power and that kind of thing. But is there a way to focus this for people and get them upset about it to the point that people actually notice? Because I feel like this is just going to go through the court system and everybody goes, moving on.
No, you're right, and even worse than that, there are a lot of suggestions that there is no good way to challenge Obama on this in court because it's potentially considered a political question, and you would have to impeach him, which nobody wants to do.
Right.
So that would mean that nothing happens. So can you upset people? I think that you have to try to explain to people, look, our Constitution says you can't do this. President Obama's just done a recess appointment when there's no recess. I don't know. If the public isn't upset by that, at least it's a good exercise in civic education. At least people, will have an opportunity to learn something about the Constitution and maybe realize that, this is something that, we can't take for granted.
Well, so you're saying that the only way they can challenge this in court would be actually have an impeachment process? They couldn't try.
I'm not saying that necessarily. I'm not a lawyer, of course. I've been reading what some people have been writing about this, and there's the idea that some people bring up is that this may not be challengeable in court. In which case that would be, that would be even worse because, there wouldn't be any serious way to challenge it.
Right, we're quite up a creek at that point.
Yeah, that would be, that wouldn't be good. Now, I've heard Democrats have said, well, you know what, the Constitution doesn't really define what recess is. So
that is true, and in fact, the definition of recess is sort of unclear, and there is no good positive definition out there, but if you look at what the Obama Justice Department, every other Justice Department, basically since this became a big problem with Teddy Roosevelt, who tried something similar to this, was condemned by Congress, and then the situation was never rectified, but it was not repeated either. You had recess, something that recess is not, and everyone has agreed all along that recess is not, including the Obama administration, which was in court last year.
2010, yeah.
2010, right. They say, no, a three-day recess, in fact, the Solicitor General explicitly says, no, a 3-day recess, of course, is not a recess. So, or a 3-day adjournment. So, we know what's going on here. This is a political, a bit of political theater. Obama's "we can't wait" agenda. I'm circumventing Congress. It's almost being done to sort of just show, hey, look how big and manly I am.
Right.
But it's a little bit, it's a little bit scary because, you're basically just breaking the law, and that's a problem. And,
I'm going to ignore the Constitution. I'm going to ignore an entire branch of government.
All right, David. Good to have you on. We really appreciate it.